Hi, I'm Michelle Matthews, and I am the Human Resources Manager here at the library, and I've been with the library for 4 years. I just celebrated my fourth anniversary. I joined the Air Force when I was 18 years old. This was in 1980, and so I joined the Air Force. I left April 15th, 1980, and I had a college friend that was also from my same high school, and she was also good, not returning to school. So we joined together on the buddy system. I just thought it was the best branch for me. I didn't see myself in the Marines or the Army. And I'm from Ohio, so I had never been around the water that much. So the Navy didn't really appeal, or the Coast Guard. And the Air Force recruiter had come to my high school. And so it was the Air Force for me. But it fit me very well. I was very happy with my choice and with my decision. And I served for 8 years. So basic training for the Air Force, pretty much for everyone, is at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And I left Lackland and I went to Biloxi, Mississippi, to Keesler Air Force Base. And I was in training to become a Morse code operator in the intelligence field, and I didn't like it. And so I ended up going to Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, and I became an intelligence operations specialist, and I really like that. So the Air Force is different from, I think, some like the Army in particular, I think. And so you are assigned, each location has different units. So my first permanent base location was at George Air Force Base in California. And I was with the 37 Tactical Fighter Wing. I was in intelligence. I worked with air crews there. The pilots flew the F-4G Wild Weasel planes. It was a great introduction, and I really liked that assignment. And when I left there, I went to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And there I was a Latin American area specialist. And I was with the 480th Reconnaissance Technical Group. And so I did a lot of top secret things in there with Central and South American countries. And while I was there, I got married and we moved to England, and we went to RAF Mildenhall, and I was assigned to the 306 Strategic Wing. And I worked with pilots who flew real world missions there. And so it was a great assignment. And then I got out there. I ended my career while I was in England. Some things that have been useful for me in civilian life was, I think, a confidence that I can do anything. The military really takes 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and oftentimes you're given a lot more responsibility than you would be in a civilian world. And so it really built my confidence that I could do pretty much anything. I didn't know anything about aircraft or dorsal fins or engines or missiles when I entered, but I knew quite a bit when I came out. And so that was really good. I think the skills is just working with people. You know, you meet all kinds of people from all over the country. I've worked with people internationally. And so I just think really understanding of people and knowing that we're more in common than we are apart and different. So in addition to really learning how to work with people, my first assignment at George Air Force Base, it was so diverse. And so I learned a lot about diversity in that assignment. And so I had the opportunity to travel and see a lot of the country. I think the other thing the military gave me was my love of travel. And so I love traveling and going to new places and meeting new people. And I really think that came from the military. And so those are some things.
My name is Bruce Malcom. I'm a public safety specialist, and I've been with the library on and off about 3 years now. I went into the military and it was January 11th of 2011. I enlisted in 2010. I still was working for the library as a library service assistant at the time. I was 20 years old. I chose to join because, to be honest, I was young. I didn't want to do college, which is funny because I ended up doing a lot of college. And I just wanted to try to see what something different was like. And it appeased my parents, so I said, hey, I'll do 4 to 6 years, and that turned out to be a little bit longer. I was living here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Originally, I was going to either go to the Marines or to the Army, and then when I heard about the testing and I took my ASVAB, I scored high enough to easily get into the Air Force. I saw some of these job options and thought, hey, this seems to be I don't want to say smarter branch, but this seems to be where the people can have easier jobs. So I wanted to try to make my time as easy as possible. And I ended up choosing a job that was in the maintenance career field. I was a tactical aircraft maintainer. So my job was the opposite of what I thought, but I did learn a lot from my experience there. So I'm still grateful that I chose that career path. And they told me, hey, you were going to go work on the F-15 Strike Eagle. You were going to be doing tactical aircraft maintenance. And still, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that, hey, I might have to work on airplanes. And they explained to me that you will be in charge of pretty much validating if aircraft is good to fly. So I pictured myself walking around with the clipboard, dressed in my blues, looking all handsome and just, well, this is good. Well, this is good. And it would be easy. They didn't explain to me that it took about 10 to 15 years to get to that point. And until then, I would be a super hardworking crew chief or a aircraft maintainer. I wasn't really mechanically inclined at the time, but I had to pretty much learn and adapt. And it really hit me when I was in tech school. And my teacher, Miss Ratcliffe, she put out these things called safety wire pliers. So we got to twist the safety wire up. Safety wire is very sharp. If you don't know how to twist it, it cuts your hands up. So our hands are like bleeding because we're new to this and we don't know how to do it. And she looked at me and she saw me struggling. And she saw me, I wasn't crying, but inside I was just dying. Like, this can't be what I signed up to actually do. And she told me, like, yeah, you're a maintainer now. There's no turning back. And from that point on, it kind of changed my mindset. And that's when reality struck that, okay, this is not going to be what you thought it was, but just because you're dealt a pretty crappy hand, it's not about the hand you're dealt, but it's about the way you play it. So I feel like I played it out pretty well. But at that time, I was dreading. I was just like, look, I got to get these next 6 years done with. But within that 6 year period, a whole lot changed. So it wound up being a pretty good job. I met a lot of good friends, the greatest camaraderie that I've ever seen. So it was a journey from start to finish. Got done with my aviation technology degree in 2016. I still was working the flight line, still was doing maintenance. And then when I chose to go and instruct, all that I had to do since I already had it, because to be an instructor of a college course, because that's technically, since they're credit awarded, you technically have to have some of the certs that instructors have to have. So they make you go through this thing, and they actually give you your aviation technology if you don't have it, but they also give you your associates for military instruction. And of course, since I have more time, since I'm not working 12 to 14 hours, I went back to school and got my bachelor's for business administration. So I got out with a lot of schooling. Even though I said earlier, the situation seemed kind of not so good when I started, I got out with quite a bit of education and took advantage of some of the perks that they had. So all in all, it was a good experience for me. For a lot of people, having a military background, they don't understand how it translates over. They don't understand like the discipline. And I could easily go and get my A&P and go work at Cincinnati State, but I told you about how a lot of my students committed suicide. So me teaching, even though I didn't directly cause them to, I feel like me knowing how this career field is and how stressful it is, I kind of feel kind of responsible to a certain extent. So I don't really have a good relationship with the teaching aspect. So I try to stay away from I don't mind teaching anything else, but when it comes to tactical aircraft maintenance, I feel like it was about, from the time that I got out in July of 2021 till now, I had about approximately 15 to 16 students that pretty much could have been a suicide. The suicide rate is really high in the Air Force. I'm going to be honest, the job sucks. And you have to deal with that. You have to deal with life stuff. When you're in the military, you're never home. I used to work 12s. Like, working a 10-hour shift was nice. That was going home early. So we had a lot of maintenance, and no matter what's going on, the mission has to get done. Jets have to fly. Pilots have to be trained. Once you get over to the desert, we actually were working at first 15 to 16-hour shifts. And that was six days a week. And then finally the commander came down and said, hey, we should work it a little bit better. So we win. So we went down to 10 hours actively on the flight line. And that didn't include our ride time, our time to get tools, turn tools in. So it was about 11 to 12 hours each day, which is better. That was nice for us. But So it was very. I said earlier how people call it the chair force because they're not familiar with a lot of the maintenance jobs. When I tell people like in the Army or people from the Marine Corps that, hey, you know when you're pinned down and a jet flies by and drops a bunch of bombs, I was like, I put that jet up. And that's when they're like, oh, so you're there 24/7. I'm like, yeah, it's always man, always something going on, always some maintenance, always fixing something. So we don't really get a break. So in the military, I'll just name a few things I learned. I learned three main things. One, I learned that it's kind of an honor to be that workhorse. Some people don't like to be the one that carries the workload because everywhere you go, there are people that work, people that kind of slack off. That's how it typically works. And I became like one of those guys that if somebody's slacking, I would still pick it up and try to understand the situation later. But there's nothing wrong with being the person that gets the crappy shift or they get put in a crappy situation because they know that you can do it. That kind of was, I always enjoyed that challenge of, hey, this can't be done. Watch it get done. I also learned that people were very different, and sometimes we label people as dirt bags and they were just bad airmen, but when you sit down and talk to them, they had a lot of stuff that was going on. And I think that with the suicide rate being so high, we started to tap into that, and I started to learn that the people that I didn't like at first were the people that had the most to actually offer. And when I talked to them and learned it, I saw that, hey, it's not a you problem, it's a me problem, not me not trying to understand you, because we sometimes create this box where everybody has to fit in. And then the last thing that I realized is that a smile goes from generation to generation, from culture to culture. I got a chance to teach people, of course, from our Air Force, but I also got a chance. We had a contract with the United Arab Emirates, so they would send some of their guys over to train with us. So teaching people and having that language barrier, I used to have a bad stutter, so they were hesitant on me teaching. Somehow I got the job. And having somebody from a different country, we would like clash. But one thing that always, anytime that I had doubt about what was going on, I would just smile and laugh, and then they would reciprocate that to me, and then it would kind of work its way through. Some of my best students were from different countries, and the barrier that I was so scared of happened to be the barrier that made us. We had some of the greatest times, and they're still on my Facebook. They still check in from different countries, and once I realized that being kind goes a lot further than any kind of degree, any kind of knowledge. Just a smile can change a situation from, hey, we don't know, to being one that's positive.
Hi, my name is Jeff Gerrein. I am the Facilities Operations Manager with the library, and I have been here, it'll be 12 years in January. I was 17. I was a senior in high school, and we had a career day at school, and members of the military, recruiters were there for that. And I got to talking to the Army recruiter and had told him, I wasn't interested in going in the service, that I was going to be a carpenter when I got out of high school. He explained to me that I could actually be a carpenter in the Army and that I could actually serve my apprenticeship in the Army. So that intrigued me, and I got to talking to him more and more, and then eventually set up a meeting with him after that to talk more about it. And next thing I knew, I was joining the Army at 17 and went in during the delayed entry program and left 9 months later. But I was 17 when I joined. My parents had to sign for me. 1979. Living with my parents and my brothers and sisters in Fort Thomas, went to Highlands High School. There are 7 kids in our family. It was kind of crowded in the house, so I also wanted to get out of the house and start out on my own, and the Army was a good opportunity to do that. And enjoyed it, actually. Enjoyed my 4 years of active duty in the Army. I was in the 43rd Engineer Battalion. My MOS, or my job in the Army, was a carpentry masonry specialist. So one thing that I got from being in the service was a sense of responsibility, a sense of a good work ethic. It made me never be late for anything. It made me very punctual. And a sense of duty and honor. And, honor serving the country while also being a carpenter in the Army.
I'm Denise Scretchen. I'm a senior branch manager at the Blue Ash Branch Library, and I've been with the library for 30 years. When I was 17 years old in high school, a lot of my classmates were deciding what they wanted to do with their lives. During that period, there were lots of commercials for the Army. Be all you can be, get more done before 5 a.m., and more than others do all day. And I wanted to serve. I kind of liked the grit that I saw in the commercials. It appealed to me. I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to make sure that I could do that as independently as possible without causing any financial burden to my parents or my family. And I knew that it would give me a certain level of strength to just kind of persevere throughout life, and it really did. This was in 1987, so I actually started in the military when I was 17 years old. Because I was underage, the recruiter had to come to my parents, and they basically had to sign all types of paperwork and documents saying that it was okay for me to serve. So I started in my unit in December of 1987, and I graduated high school in 1988. So the unit that was closest to my house was the 377th Military Police Unit, and the MPs trained at that time at Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama. And I was fortunate because my grandmother lived in Anniston, Alabama, and I spent lots of summers there. I knew that once I finished with all of my training, I would be able to do my monthly drills as a reservist at the 377th Military Police Unit on Seymour Avenue in near Roseline. Well, the military police, they dealt with security, securing perimeters, going in and making sure that areas were safe, deciding, who was allowed entry into what areas. I worked actually in a motor pool as a clerk. And when I finished my years, I was a sergeant. And I also helped to train, new recruits that came into our unit. A total of 8 years. It was what was called a 6x2 contract. You had to serve 6 active years, and then 2 years were at the end were individual ready reserve. I actually did 7 active years and 1 individual ready reserve year. For me, I think the military just kind of set me up for success. It taught me, that I could do what I kind of put my mind to. And it gave me a certain grit that I felt like was needed, that has helped me, to be successful and where I am today. One of the things that I took with me was kind of take care of your squad. I've taken, from that experience to take care of the people that are looking up to you, to check on the people that you're kind of in charge of helping along and making sure that they're okay. Another big lesson I learned was hurry up and wait. That is kind of like one of the major mottos of the military. Always be ready to be ready, but be ready to wait as well, which taught me to be, flexible and adaptable. I try to always have an ability to laugh through situations, even when they're tough. And there was a time when something had happened in the military. And this was in basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. And the drill sergeants would come and say, everybody on the strip, everybody on the strip. And what that meant was that you were supposed to get by your bunk and you were supposed to stand at parade rest until they told you at ease and share whatever information they had to share with you. Well, at the time that drill sergeant was calling everybody on the strip, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth. So I showed up to my bunk with my toothbrush in my mouth. And the drill sergeant couldn't help but laugh. And that was the first time I ever saw him crack a smile and laugh. But he did make me do some push-ups with my toothbrush in my mouth.
Hi, I'm Bill Lane. I'm the IT manager here at the library. I've been here for almost 11 years, started in January of 2013. I was 17. It was the summer before my senior year of high school. I was just kind of sitting at home during the summer, not doing much with my time, wasn't doing a lot of good, getting in a little bit of trouble. So, there was just a day I decided to start getting my life straightened out, start doing better and to be better. Sitting there by myself, thinking about the things that were going on and things I was doing. In an instant, I just said, I'm just going to go ahead and join the military. I heard the Marine Corps was pretty tough, pretty intense. And I was like, well, I want to be the first in the family to do that. That's how much thought I put into that decision. It's about how long it took. I got up and I actually drove straight down to the recruiter and walked right at the Marine Corps office was at the end of the hall. And I remember walking in and every recruiter, the Air Force and the Navy and, National Guard and stuff, they would all like, hey, come here, kid. As I walked by their doors, they all had glass fronts. And I'm like, no, thank you. I just went to the very end and I saw the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor and I turned into his door. I said, I want to be a Marine. And he smiled. He goes, well, come here, kid. And that's how that happened. It was the first time I'd been away on my own. First time ever flying on an airplane. We had to fly down to South Carolina. And then riding on the bus, when we got there, these young Marines picked us up. And we rode on a bus for 3-4 hours at night. And you think like, you can't see anything because it was dark and it was raining. And you think you're just like out in the middle of nowhere. And then as we pulled through the gate, I could see the Parris Island Recruit Depot sign. And I just had a really bad feeling. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. It was very hard. Everybody breaks, they break everybody down to build you back up. So some people took longer than others to get to that point. But, when you first get there, they keep you up for like 3 days straight, because they want you all to fall asleep together for the first time. You wake up together and then you get on that pattern. So it's pretty, when you do it, you're thinking, man, this is just crazy, but there is a method to the whole thing, psychological. Yeah. You would dream about it in your, so you never got away from boot camp. You were there 24/7 for 13 weeks. Out of boot camp, I actually went to Marine combat training down in Camp Geiger, North Carolina. It's next to Camp Lejeune. That was a month-long, combat training course. Everybody in the Marine Corps is a basic rifleman. So, no matter what job you have, being a rifleman is your core job, So after that, I went to Camp Johnson, North Carolina, which is right down the road, for school. I was a 3521 diesel mechanic. Worked on heavy equipment, troop carriers, 5-ton dump trucks, logistic vehicle systems, really big trucks. Did that for about 9 months and then shipped right over to Camp Foster, Okinawa, Japan. Yep. So I was there. It was supposed to be a year duty. I was in the 3rd Motor Transport Battalion. We supported the Marine 3rd Expeditionary Unit. And so we were there. I didn't really like it. It's pretty hot over there. It's like the hottest day you ever felt here is what it is at 5:30 a.m. So pretty bad. About 9 months in, Desert Storm, the Gulf War started. So I had been there 9 months. I had 3 months to go. And then they'd come and tell us, instead of sending you to Kuwait, we're just going to make you stay here another 6 months. So I was a year and a half gone. So basic training, I started in August of 1989. Graduated November 10th, 1989 on Marine Corps birthday. So it was the end of November to the end of December was Marine combat training of 1989. And then into 1990 was schooling. And then probably the summer of 1990 is when I went to Okinawa. So being over there too, when I graduated boot camp, November 10th, I got married on November 13th. So I got through Okinawa. I returned back to the United States, went to Camp Lejeune, 2nd Combat Engineers, 2nd Marine Division, and I actually joined the unit that I would have went to over in Kuwait. They were just getting back from the Gulf War, and that's where I spent the duration of my time. 2nd Combat Engineers, it's a different unit. It's like you're a diesel mechanic, but you also go out during combat situations, clearing minefields, clearing bunkers, and things like that. You don't think about that being like a diesel mechanic, that you're going to be in that kind of situation. But 4 years, 4 years active, and then you had to do 4 years inactive. But there were times like I would have to go to desert training. They would just give me like a week's notice, so we'd have to I'd have to go get my wife, get her packed up, get her home, and then come back. It was tough on a relationship for sure. It was the best thing I ever did for me. 21. Yeah, because I turned 18 right before I went to boot camp. And then, I have like 2 sons, both are in the Army. So when it came time for them, when they decided they wanted to join, I was like, well, let's try the Army or the Air Force, just because there's a lot more opportunity, in the bigger branches. The jobs are different and things like that. So, serving in a time of war, you don't think about it when you're doing it, but when your kid goes, like leadership traits, being honest, integrity, dependability, learning responsibility, what it is to be an adult, to do the right thing when nobody's looking, to have good judgment, to be dependable, those things like that. I can't stand to be late. It's kind of always been a weird thing, but if you have some good traits, some qualities, and you just, stick with that, you're usually pretty good to go no matter where you're at. During the Okinawa time, it was a lot of long days. Boot camp just felt like forever because there was no clocks, no calendars. It's 24/7 for the whole time. You don't even realize the month passes to the next month until you see like a stamp on a letter or something. And then in Okinawa was like during the war and everything. So we worked a lot of long days. We'd start at 5:30 in the morning and go till 11 at night, just to get vehicles, have them prepared and ready to roll. And in case, we got sent, to the Gulf. It was just a lot of long days and, being away from home and away from your wife and things. So it was tough. So it just makes it pretty hard. I don't know how the other boot camps and, how it works in the Army or the Air Force, but, you have to perform, you have to change. If you don't, you're not going to succeed. And then, you go through the combat training, then you get out there and actually something happens. Now you could be responsible for somebody's life.